Love, blessings, peace, and prosperity. My love, you are tuned into the Cafecito Tarot Podcast. And it's me, Nicole P, your spiritual barista, serving you up wisdom, guidance, and inspiration from the cards. My love, I'm recording this episode on Monday evening, June 2nd, and I have the brew, the tarot brew that is, and I'm going to serve up two brews this week. I'm a little less on the podcast for these upcoming weeks as I've got a really full plate with my mom's new treatments and schedules and so many different other things that are that are being called to be tended to. I'm also in this phase of rooting. If you don't know, really quickly, we moved back to the Midwest after being 25 years in the PNW in October. Winter kicked our butts, and we forgot all about below zero and just like what winter is. And I guess it wasn't even that bad of a winter. And I just was like, oh my gosh. Anyways, it was a really hard move. It was one that we hadn't planned to do, and Spirit took us here. It was divinely guided, but it was like we got our butts kicked. It was like we got chewed up and spit out of the PNW, and so there was a lot of sorrow. I had a lot of pain and going through winter, and I I have boxes. I have clothes that are piled all over. Um, we've rooted some, but not totally of like, yeah, we're here. And the call is to really root because this is where we are. And I guess you had to go through that process. You had to go through what you have to go through. You have to allow the cycles of grief and sorrow and all that stuff and exhaustion I don't think let me just say this before I get into the brew, please, like, I don't think we really, allow ourselves the full expansive experience of our exhaustion. I think being in a, like, settler colonial, like, capitalistic society, we're just so used to, like, "Okay, yeah, that was exhausting. Yeah, that was traumatic. Move on." And that really ties into so much of the Three of Swords, which I'll get to in just a few moments, but like what exhaustion does to your body, to your mind, to your spirit, and then when you cut it short and then keep going and going, like exhaustion, especially when you're going through some really big changes, I just don't think I think how would you say that? We underestimate just how much time and space and rest our bodies and our souls need. And so I feel like I finally am feeling rested and I'm finally feeling like I have energy. It took, oh, was that 7 or 8 months? And I finally feel like now I'm recuperated and I'm ready to rock and roll. So with that being said, in the next couple weeks, I'll be here just a couple days as I just get everything settled and yeah, and get Mama D up on her way and getting things settled with that. And we're in June. We're in June and halfway through a calendar cycle. Gemini season's here in full effect. And the zodiacal season, right? We're in our third month. And it's a time really, whether you measure or are in relationship with the calendar cycle or the zodiacal or natural cycle or both, um, or maybe you have a completely different cycle that you are attuned to. This is a time that is really precious to take moments of reflect and really tap into that Gemini energy of air, of thinking, of reflection on just about the seeds that are being planted, the intentions that you would like to set forth coming into the summer season, not rushing through this precious time of spring still for those of us here in the northern hemisphere and this precious time of Gemini. But it's like a really great time to be like, the last few months, like what has transpired? What have I learned? What am I carrying forth with me into the seasons ahead? What am I ready to leave behind? And I did a card pull and some journaling for myself last night, Sunday night on the 1st, and I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to share just really briefly this with you because this might be of service to you and maybe it's something for you to sip on and see how it how it feels in your body. And so with June, the main one of the themes, overarching themes, was stepping out of a comfort zone, really tuning into the energies of the North Node in one's chart. And what does that mean? Like, what is becoming? How are we becoming? How and I'm becoming? How are you becoming? And looking at the energies of the planetary energies of the North Node in your chart, and coming out, like, for myself, asking myself, like, where am I uncomfortable? Like, how can I step out of my comfort zone? How am I being very cognizant, aware that I'm not going to be playing it safe any longer? Where are those areas that I need to really push that extra, like, push for myself and get out of a comfort zone? The three words that come up from, I use like four different decks. From one of the decks that I've used for many, many years, especially in my readings, called the body cards. And the three words that came out for the theme for June, the three words were connection, honesty, and willpower. Very interesting, right? In the context of stepping out of comfort zone in the North Node, like how, what is the call, right, from the energy of the North Node? The tarot card of the month is the Ace of Swords for June. Very interesting, right? Because we have the Gemini energy, and then we're coming into dun da da summer season, Cancer, season of Cancer, kicking it off. So Ace of Swords, right? That way of a fresh perspective of that air energy. And I'm feeling so much the Ace of Swords not only as a way of like allowing the truth to roll off one's tongue, but the Ace of Swords as a has a as a weapon to cut through BS, as a weapon to cut through any ties, anything that one from keeps one in the comfort zone, right? Tying that once again, backing out, stepping back to stepping out of the comfort zone. So the Ace of Swords as a weapon, as a tool, I should say, as a tool, a powerful tool, the tongue. I just keep on hearing tongue. It's like your tongue and your tool, like having the sword in hand to cut through. And it's like cutting through energies. And as you do, and as you're cutting, I just am envisioning, or I should say we, because this is something I wrote up for myself, and I was only going to share a little bit, but it's just coming out of my mouth. So I'm going to go for it. So I just envision like, one grabbing this sword and just cutting right in front, right? Like right now, my eyes are closed. I'm grasping the sword, and this is all happening in my mind's eye as my body is following along, and I'm cutting through the air and imagining like this is anything, any energy that is keeping me bound to outdated, patterns of behavior that keep me small, that keep me bound to like this abandonment of my truth, and just cutting through, cutting through chaos, cutting through destruction, cutting through any energies that have been spewing towards us, and with the intention of making us small or making us fearful and shrinking. And so this is such a time, not only personally, but the collectively, and how they weave together for a time of standing strong and saying, no more, I will not shrink myself. We will not shrink ourselves. We will not fall prey to your lies, your convictions, to your fear inducing venom. Yeah, so that's a tool to, like, cut through venom. That's what I'm feeling, like, it's like slaying, like, destructive cockamamie dragons, although dragons are precious. So let's say energy. I don't wanna speak harmful of any kind of animal, figuratively or not. So, the Ace of Swords. And there's 3 planetary, like, another deck that I pulled from, and there are 3 cards that came up were new moon. So a lot of, like, these new moon cycles, these new beginnings, these initiations, and a remembrance, I believe, that comes so strongly, is that there's always a chance to start again. You always have a chance to start again, right? You always have a chance to say, "No, this is not the way I wanted to go. let me choose again. Let me try again. Um, and Pluto, that energy, that Scorpion energy, so that planetary energy of destruction, of change, and chaos, which we can see existing. It has been. It's just like, intensifying. But the way of the how do we tune into, because things that are built on unsteady ground or on of um graves of ancestral bones, right? When graves and things that are they're built on lies and destruction, eventually come to be destroyed. And so I'm not feeling that that card is pulled necessarily out of fear or anything of that, but as a reminder that it's like it reminds me that what's coming to my mind is um just the energy, for example, of Christy C. Rhodes, like the Next World Tarot. It's like the way in which we rise from the destruction and the ways in which the energy of the chaos actually propels our genius and propels our brilliance. And that bone against bone really cuts through. Um, it cuts through. That's all I can say is it just cuts through, and we can see with a vision that's oh so clear. Because once again, I just keep hearing bone against bone, bone against bone, and in life, when you get ripped open really raw, the veil thins, like there's no veil at all. And we are in those times, and it's just becoming even more intensified, even more clear. Um, so Pluto, new moon, and then the card I pulled is Vesta. Now I'm not much one who have studied much with the asteroids. And I had looked it up in the guidebook of the deck that I use, and the author had talked about Vesta as an asteroid connected to like a commitment to self and this dedication, very similar to like I would feel like having some Saturn energy of like dedicating to home in that space. And it's interesting because, coming into the season of Cancer, we have the Chariot and so much of our home and the Cancer energy and our bodies. And but what I really though felt connected to the energy of the asteroid of Vesta, more about the asteroid itself as a matter in the cosmos, that some say that this matter is created because either it's smaller than a planet, that planets or other matter have collided, and then we have these asteroids. Now, I could be wrong. This was a general, I'm not an astronomer, or I don't study astronomy. If you know, please correct me. I am here to learn, but I find it very, um, very, how would you say it, corresponding to um, how we are existing, right? So much is crashing, and we have these particles, and then they become existence of their own. And so it's like from what of the chaos and what of the destruction is the remnants that are remaining, and how we are shaping them, and and just how something can grow from collisions, so to speak, from worlds colliding, from timelines colliding, and what forms. And so, yeah, I kind of went, we kind of went there with that. So that's general, you know, uh, vibe, I guess, that I felt from those cards and just journaling last night. And like I said, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but once I opened up my journal, I have it right here. And the words just came out. So I trust that that's what spirit guided me and wanted me to share. Now, I pulled the Three of Swords. Cosmic connection is Saturn and Libra. And, you know, as I am sitting here, I'm really reflecting and feeling into how that card is so connected to what I just shared. And I'm feeling that this card in the Three of Swords, I mean, when the Three of Swords comes up, there's a multitude of messages, as with all cards, right? That are being called to be shared. And But here's what I feel so strongly about the Three of Swords today in relationship to where we are right now, the energies and what I shared for the June energy reflection is that we have to give ourselves the space and the grace when we are opening up our eyes, when we are choosing to see, when we are cutting, taking that Ace of Swords, right, and cutting through so much of the kaka, so much of the ties, things that have bound us. There's pain, there's sorrow, there's grief, and that's a natural process. That's a natural way. That's a natural flow. But there's a pain and sorrow and grief that happens many times when we start to awaken to truth, awaken to knowing, because once we begin to know, it's very hard to unknow. And there's a sorrow that happens. There's a sorrow that comes to surface when we begin to see all the illusions and how we had once been somewhat delusional, right? Had lived in the illusions, and then you start to wake up to see, and it's like I've been asleep, or I've been like, what do you call, like in a trance. I've been. I don't want to say cursed. No, that's not the word. It's like I can't think of the word, but it's like when you've just been like asleep, so to speak, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, wow, oh my gosh, this is not how I want to be. Like, oh my gosh, I see the truth now. And once again, it's very hard to unknow once you know. And there's sorrow and there's grief in that. And so the Three of Swords, Saturn and Libra, because we have Libra, right, is connected to the goddess of justice. That is the goddess of justice is the major arcana for Libra. We have with Saturn, we have a connection to the Devil card. We also have energy of the World card. And also too with Libra, we have energy of the Empress, right? And so it's like when we start to recognize we have been asleep, recognize the lies that we once thought were truths, it becomes like a desecration, right? It's we're called to abandon what used to be comfortable and quote unquote useful for us. And once we know, it's like we cannot go back. And sometimes that change, even though that change, that evolution, that transmutation, transformation is what our soul is craving, there's things and people and places that we leave behind and that can be very sad. They could cause some hurt, right, in the heart. And it's a process. It's a process. Growth at times can feel very painful. And sometimes having knowledge and knowing brings about some of that pain. And it's a call to feel the pain, any frustration, and also sometimes there becomes a pain that we believed what we believed, that we weren't awake sooner, or that we had abandoned ourselves all those years. And here's the thing: at some point in time, you have to be able to forgive yourself and be at peace and say you did the best that you did. You eventually came to the truth, right? And you have to just say your process, your path is your path, and you are where you are. So the Three of Swords, I feel like this is another card, um, I think like really prominent in this year, in this calendar year, and like it's almost like a catalyst, I think, for the collective change and progression and consciousness, like this collective consciousness that's being activated. Because once you know, there's no going back. There's no going back. And so we have to acknowledge that there is pain and sorrow and grief in that process, and it is okay. That's what I got for you. That's a brew. That's a long brew. So today's like Monday. I will come back on Thursday. I'll come back on Thursday and give you a little bit of a longer brew for to get you through the weekend. And I think maybe next weekend or the following I'll get back to the daily. So let's say this weekend. Let me give myself. I'm gonna give myself some space and grace. Let me say this weekend and next week. I'll give two brews for you, and then I'll be back to the daily tarot brews, which I love them so much when I have the space and just able to come to it from love instead of really being frantic to try and get them out there. So, that's what I got. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for listening. I hope this has served you in some way, shape, or form. Like I said, I wasn't planning on, uh, yeah, it wasn't what I planned on speaking about. And there it is. So, spirit, spirits, wanted me to share. And so I did. My love, thank you for tuning in. If you've not done so already and you're really flowing with this work with the Cafecito and Tarot podcast, please feel free to leave a review on your listening platform of choice. It means the world to me. It helps to get this work of love out to the world, helps me to grow and expand and then feel, listen, hey, I got a lot of Leo, okay? So it feeds my Leo sun, Leo moon, Leo Mars, and Leo Mercury, okay? So, it feeds the lioness in me. So thank you if already left a review. And if you haven't, yeah, throw me a bone or throw me a couple stars. Throw me a 5-star, would ya? And yeah, that's what I got for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm out. Bye.